it's nice to like actually like be able to like interact with like a teacher and stuff.
Oh.
And because online, it's if you have technical issues, you don't have like an actual teacher you can communicate with. Like sometimes if you have questions or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And sometimes when they're explaining things in an online course, and you don't always get it. You don't really have a teacher there to ask, okay, well, can you explain that? Can you give an example? Can you explain that in a different form? It's kind of what they give you is what you get, and if you don't understand it, then it's too bad.
Right.
How does it change your lesson design, having folks in 3 different locations as opposed to all the students in a room in front of you?
That's the best thing about these centers. That this is really pretty, the technology, and we're still working through it. I mean, it's just, we just got a new mic. I've got a second camera to get hooked up. But, fortunately, these, Talise and Kayla are whizzes. They show up at 7 o'clock, boom, they've got the system up and running. But in terms of teaching the class, and I know you guys might have some questions about the senator's teaching background, because he was an English teacher. But I think that, it's pretty seamless. It's really not that different. This is run pretty much as a seminar class. Active participants, not just lecture. We're working on flipping the classroom a bit because I've got the capacity to record stuff. I want to be posting some of the lecture stuff that these guys can watch at home and advance the class, so we can really preserve the time we have together in the morning for discussion. It's a little different in terms of collaboration. Obviously peer review for a paper, for example, is run a little differently. But I don't know, do you guys, it's been, this is our 3rd week, 4th week? What is it, 5th week already?
Yeah.
How much are you guys aware of the technology? And I've asked this of you guys, girls too, in Brush. Does the technology seem like a big part of the class or not?
Not really. Like you get used to it. Like at first it was weird, but.
Yeah. Well, it's weird to see yourself.
It was weird.
Connor, you've got this. Questions for the senators? You guys have any questions?
So knowing what you know now about education and also your opinions on education at the moment, would you change your your own high school education? Would you change anything about it?
Wow, what a great question. I spent a lot of my time as a teacher and principal trying to copy some of the things in my high school education that I liked. I liked that I grew up in a pretty small town. I went to a pretty small high school, and so there was a lot of relationships across grades. I spent a lot of time with kids from either other grades in the high school, or my school was a K-12 school, so you would also get to know a lot of younger kids and they would get to know older kids, and I liked that kind of cross relationship between kids of different ages. And so when I was a principal for 6 years, and I ran a high school in Adams County just north of Denver. And one of the things we tried to do was also deliberately build relations between middle school kids and high school kids. And so that part I liked. I think if there were things I would have changed, I probably would have liked to have had a more diverse high school experience. I grew up on the Western Slope in Eagle County in a pretty small town, and so you don't see as much of the world as you might in places with more diversity. But I think the thing that was great for me was you had a lot of the kind of thing that you all have now, which is the ability to have a teacher who's passionate about something and want to start a new course or take on a new subject, and you just say, hey, let's do it at 7 a.m. So I had a math class I met at 7 a.m. like yours, because there was no other time of the day to do it. And I had a lit teacher, probably like Mr. Lavender, who when I was wanting to read more books, he just gave them to me and read them on our own, and came and sat in his office after school and talked through them. And so I feel like that kind of personal relationship was a huge impact for me, and I think probably is for you as well.
I know you were teaching in Mississippi, right?
I did. I taught in Mississippi, and then I was in Colorado for 6 years after that.
Right, yeah. What did you like to teach?
So I taught English, and I taught 9th and 10th grade English. I taught a Greek mythology course, which I loved, and then I taught a couple of Shakespeare courses. I taught a couple of drama courses. So I taught a series of plays that I really enjoyed. A lot of them, if you all know August Wilson, I used to teach a lot of August Wilson plays, which are kind of mid-20th century stories of African-American narratives through different parts of history. So this is an amazing guy who wrote one play about every decade of the 20th century. So and after he finished the 10th play, he died about 2 months after that. And so I had first seen the first play when I was in high school at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts down here in Denver, and had spent my life reading a bunch, and then got to lead a course where I taught 4 or 5 of them, and then we did 2 of the productions at school, which was a lot of fun as well.
Perfect. Yeah, fences is a pretty mainstay in our curriculum. They're actually, we're reading Scarlet Letter right now, but these guys earlier to set up the Scarlet Letter, we just did a quick review of the Transcendentalists. I'm kind of curious because one of the pieces that we read, these guys wrote about, was Emerson's Divinity School address. And given the fact here's Emerson, a reformer, meeting a fairly hostile audience. And I don't know if you're familiar with that piece, but I do know that you too were speaking at a Harvard graduation.
I was. I don't know that speech. I need to read it. I'm a big fan of Emerson, and so, but I have not read that one. So I'm glad I have a new assignment for tonight. That'll be my homework.
You can read or not?
Yeah.
I will do the first poster I ever had hanging in my room, my first year as a classroom teacher, is the Emerson's quote about success, right? Which is the famous quote about, to endure the criticism of honest critics, and so I've kept that for the 15 years, but I have not read it. I did have the experience of, I went to give the commencement at the Harvard Education School this spring, and there were a handful, a little more than a handful of students who didn't want me to be the commencement speaker, so they started a petition drive to have me removed as the commencement speaker. But it actually ended up going well. I reached out to them in advance and said, hey, if there are criticisms, I'd love to sit down and talk. And so I went a day early and spent the afternoon before the commencement address sitting down with the critics. And we were supposed to spend 30 minutes together. We spent about 2 hours and had a great conversation. I've been in close touch with a handful of them. 2 of them I'm working on a project with around actually some statewide engagement of teachers around teacher morale and leveraging teacher voice to, I think, improve the advocacy and power of teachers across our system. And so it was a good example for me of there are often always things you have to learn from your critics if you're willing to sit down and engage in conversation with them. So it was a good learning experience for me.
Well, from what I read, I believe there was a standing ovation after the speech.
That was true. It was funny. After the speech was over, the dean showed me they have sort of a playbook for how the event goes. And he said, Mike, I never showed you the last 10 pages of the playbook, but here was all the plans if they started throwing things at you at the stage, or people got up and walked out, or they assigned me 2 Boston police detail for the day that I was there. I was like, it's not an assassination attempt, it's just a protest. But they were prepared for far more drama than we ended up delivering.
Well, you've got to read your Divinity School address, because, it wound up getting Emerson banned from speaking at Harvard for 30 years. It was precisely this. Emerson was a reformer, and he came in there and pretty much read them the riot act. And so what else? Because we got about, I don't know how much time we have. These guys have a break coming up. Other questions for these guys?
Yes, I do have a question, but on that same front, I just also finished reading this last weekend Frederick Douglass's speech on what to the slave is the 4th of July, which is similar speech where he gets invited to this group to be the 4th of July speaker, thinking that he's going to thank them so much and praise America for all of its accomplishment, and he instead gives a quite scathing speech about why would he be celebrating your holiday. So it was really powerful.
Other questions for Senator? No? What terms of, well, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you what you all are reading now. So you just did the Emerson speech and now is Scarlet Letter?
Oh, we read a bunch of Emersons and Thoreaus and Whitman just to set us up for, to see how these transcendentalist ideals were expressed in fiction. So Scarlet Letter, we're about 6 chapters in. What do you guys think so far?
Like it.
It's a great book. Once you get past the incredibly dense prose, although it's a treasure trove of SAT vocab words.
That is true.
It's a really wonderful soap opera. My favorite time ever teaching Scarlet Letter was back when Clinton was on the verge of being impeached, and the transference of chilling words to Ken Starr and poor Hetzer to Monaco, it worked very well.
There's also an interesting, if you saw the New York Times Magazine had a cover story on Sunday about the Gary Hart. The first Gary Hart was sort of the beginning of the trend of inquiry and assault on elected officials based on this Scarlet Letter question. So you might be your own contemporary version of the Scarlet Letter.
where did the personal stuff become public? You know?
That's right.
That's an interesting piece. Reform. What are these guys? These guys are on the verge. These are all, hard-charging, college-bound kids. What do you think are being the big issues that face them in terms of as they finish up their senior year, begin looking to make that transition to college? In terms of the sorts of reforms you're looking at, both at the secondary level and higher education?
Well, and I have some questions for you all about what you're seeing as well, but I think obviously this is a quite advanced and accelerated group. I think what we're seeing as one of the big challenges is we have a lot of high schools where we have kids coming out who are doing pretty well. Then they enter college and we find out that they're not yet prepared to start college. So folks who are arriving on a college campus and discovering you need remediation in math, remediation in English to take the entry-level, freshman-level courses, I'm optimistic none of you will be in that situation. But we find a lot of students from my high school or others who will get to college and figure out they're paying extra money out of pocket, not covered by financial aid, to take remedial courses to get caught up in English and math. And so that's one of those things we're trying to make sure we're getting high school kids better prepared to enter college, ready to hit the road. And so as you look at kind of the raising of our standards, the raising of a more rigorous set of assessments you'll see this year, one of the things we're finding is that when you look at America's performance against the rest of the world, it is not that we're getting worse, we're just sort of staying flat, but other countries are accelerating up like this. And so we're trying to make sure we help keep pace with you being competitive by making sure we set the highest of expectations for you. And then obviously we're working hard to make sure that college is going to be accessible and affordable because we've seen runaway tuition rates in colleges over the last couple of years. As the state economy has tanked, we've cut more and more funding for higher ed and put more and more of the bill in your hands, really. So we're trying hard to contain some costs for higher ed. I'd be curious to give the question back to you. You all are now at the tail end of your K-12 experience and are obviously accomplished leaders in your own schools. If there's one thing you think that we're getting wrong right now, or we ought to be paying more attention to than we are, if you had the magic wand to change one or two things about the K-12 system in Colorado, what do you think we ought to spend time improving or fixing or changing?
Well, it's a big question.
Yeah.
Brooke, Amy, Kelly, any change one thing about your educational experience, what would it be?
I'd say getting out to do more. For me, I'd say like getting out to do more things like to do with what you want to be, like getting out and experiencing those fields instead of like in class lecturing all the time. Maybe be able to get out and go experience those things.
More internship type exposure or experiences?
Yeah.
And can I ask you one quick follow-up? What would have been the couple of types of things you would have wanted to do? Are there certain fields you would have wanted to have access to that you didn't, or you don't have to know that answer? I'm just curious if you do.
I don't know. I want to go into the medical field, so
Wow.
I mean anything to do with that would be cool.
It's great advice. Other suggestions?
Amy, Michaela, Talitha, one thing you could change? I mean, you're in a bunch of different situations. I mean, here Brush has a lot of resources. You guys have, they just lost their only senior, and I think they've got, 7 juniors now?
Yeah.
So what's the one thing you would change?
I think what I would change isn't so much academic because we have intern programs here. So ours would kind of be, because we're so small, we kind of miss out on the extracurricular things. Like we don't have many sports teams or many opportunities to participate in plays or anything like that. So that's what I would change here.
What's the closest other high school to you if you all were to partner with them?
We partner with Ure for track.
Yep.
But that's kind of it. We're on our own for a basketball team and soccer. We play co-ed and with 5th graders and 6th graders. So on our
Wow.
And of course, your Red's not that close. You gotta go over Red Mountain. So.
Yeah. That's
How
not.
about you guys? Anybody here? One thing you could change? Mike, Ben?
Maybe making education a pathway to where you want to be in life, and not just a generalization of what to learn, but using school as a way to get where you want to be. So
Interesting. You think most juniors know where they want to be?
I do.
We're
But
kind of expected
Yeah.
to. Right?
Yeah, and learn stuff that like you'll use in life, like how to fix a car, pay the bills, the rent, and and if you're not good at one subject, that one subject shouldn't bring your whole GPA down.
Okay.
I don't know. Seems like.
I'm impressed. You're well ahead of me. I'm more with Mr. Lavender. I'm not sure I know what I want to be in life yet, and I'm almost 40. So you're way ahead of me. So you would be pushing for more almost career-based technical training earlier on in high school would be part of your feedback. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just like
Maddie?
I would
life
say
skills.
in comparison, I spent a year abroad in Sweden, and in Sweden, the high school program is a little bit different. They have vocational school and then also school that prepares you for university. So in vocational school, for instance, there's technical programs that you learn how to be a carpenter, you learn how to work in a restaurant, learn how to be a chef, or you learn how to be a mechanic in school, and you go to high school for that specific thing.
And how early do you have to make that choice? And do you
About
make that
16,
16?
and you make that personal choice. What? And then, but then you can also choose, like, for instance, I was in the economic program, which it's focused mostly on economics, but I also got to take other courses, of course, as well, and that prepares you for university.
That's great.
Taylor, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say just like we take these required core classes like math, science, reading, whatever, and then like it's required that we take like an economics class for half a semester when like life is like based on economics. It's just kind of
Like they should put more emphasis on something like that.
What about, and this is, because Senator Johnston is, is certainly somebody who's very, very familiar with this question, but what about our standardized testing that's been increasing for a bit? The kind of testing that I think in Sweden, I may be wrong, but I think the kind of testing that pretty much determines whether you go on the vocational track or you go on some sort of professional track.
There are standardized testings that they don't determine which one you go into, but they determine whether or not you get into high school in general. And then you also take another one to get into college and university.
What's been your experience as juniors throughout your career with testing? Because Senator Johnston's been at the forefront of teacher accountability, of trying to ensure that you guys are placed with competent adults who know what they're doing and who can demonstrate, that you guys have grown in terms of your intellectual maturity, your mastery of a different subject from one year to the next. I don't know, what's been your experience testing just something? Yeah, Ben?
It's a good idea, kind of summarizes what you've learned and stuff, but some kids are better test takers than others, and some people just aren't good at test taking or have bad days, which could set them down. Which
Okay.
kind of
Yeah, it's like I just feel like lots of times when you're taking a test, like you might forget an answer, but then remember it 5 minutes later. Does that mean you're 5 minutes like less qualified for a certain position? I don't really like that idea. It's kind of like there should be like I'm not sure how to do it, but I feel like there should be a better way for how tests are designed and how they're taken.
Yeah.
Great example.
I don't know. I kind of, I think testing, final exams and semester exams are like, kind of summarize like what you've learned in a specific class. But when it comes to like state standardized testing, I feel like that kind of distracts from what you're learning in like an actual classroom compared to just an overall general view of math or science or reading.
Because it's not as aligned to the actual content in your classes, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have that we had that experience, of course, in AP. We don't really talk about the test until sometime. I don't know if you taught AP as well, but basically I have to tell these kids, forget everything I've taught you about writing. Here's what you need to do. Well, it's a very unnatural. I've been an AP reader for years and years.
Really? I've never taught AP. I know the exams well, but I've never taught it before. And so it's always an interesting example of, because I think the AP exam is one that people have a pretty strong degree of faith and confidence that it's meritorious and that it's rigorous. And so in some ways it sets the bar for the other tests that people don't often feel that way about it. So I'm always curious about the experience of AP teachers in terms of how that alignment feels.
It's a good exam. It's just having taught English, that most important one does is rewrite it. And of course, this is an extraordinary 40-minute essay, but it does. I mean, it does. And I think as an assessment tool. I know that my fellow readers, I mean, I think that, we're very conscientious. I do think you get a sense of a kid's natural facility with language and what they know about this thing called analysis, not critical thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, let's. Oh, go ahead. If you have another thought, go ahead.
And I think it can be pretty stressful for a lot of students if just one test determines their grade in the class or where they go to college or their future based on one test. Kind of puts a lot of stress on that.
Stress can be a good thing. Right, one more thing, because Senator, what do you say, Ray?
Mine was kind of on the same line as Taylor's, that we put so much pressure on these core classes, and half of them we're probably not even going to really, like, there's some things that we learned in math that we're probably never going to use in our lives, but then we're spending so little time on economics and things like that. So, and those are the things we're actually going to need in real life. So I think we should focus more on those, and maybe have, like, if you really want to be a mathematician when you're older, fine, there can be a math club and you can go join that. Math to your heart's content, but like,
right,
people that want nothing to do with that field.
To be fair, there are cognitive skills you learn in math. I mean, we're not reading Scarlet Letter to learn about adultery or Puritans. Train ourselves in this thing called critical thinking, which is how can we make an argument about a text and use apt and specific examples to support and develop that argument. And those are pretty transferable skills, I think. Yeah.
I kind of wish that we had like a home ec class where we could like learn about like banking and like how to cook and like life skills that like we'll carry on and we'll start using now, and we can help out our parents at home, and like classes like that like are true life skills.
Well, Kelly and Brogan, Amy, how much VOTEC do you guys have up in Brush? Do you guys have home ec or shop or?
Yeah, we have all those.
Yes.
There will be a sportsman's club meeting Thursday at lunch in.
I think my kids also probably wish that I had a home ec class when I was in high school, because I'm not very good at cooking or baking either. That's a big gap. So one invitation, if you will. So I unfortunately have to jump right now, but I would love to offer, if you all ever want to do a reunion of your 3 separate sites, I would love to host you at the state capitol in Denver. And so if you all want to come down to Denver, you could. I would give you the education committee room. You could have your class. You could have an AP class in the Senate Education Committee room, and I would take you all out to lunch. And so, if you can find a time, sometime in the spring, to come to Denver, we're in session January to May. We could do a little AP Lit, and we could have lunch together. You could see the state capitol.
That'd be terrific.
That'd be sweet.
Post AP though, we gotta get through the exam first.
Yeah, after the exam, you'll be much less stressed. We can have you anytime.
Post or Brush, we could we can swim by Silver and throw you guys on the bus.
That would be fantastic. So if you can make it, I'll take care of everything else. Just get yourself to Denver.
Terrific. I'll follow up with an email. Listen, these guys have to get to the 6th period or 5th period. What's it?
5th.
Girls, thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Have a good one.
We'll see you in Denver, I hope.
So we know you have to run.
Yeah.